Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Always an Expat, a podcast for British expats in America by British expats in America, brought to you by fellow British expat, yours truly, Richard Taylor. My guest today is Mark Ridley. Mark is both a personal friend and a client of my firm, Plan First Wealth. He's a long-time professional in the foreign exchange and global payments industry, and he lives in Scituate, which is a Boston suburb, with his American wife Leah and son Baxter. Born and bred in East London and West Essex, we're going to explore Mark's journey to and in the US over the last 9 years, which, incidentally, is exactly how long I've been here. And because Mark and I do know each other very well and have done for a considerable amount of time, I'm anticipating this podcast will be even more personal than usual. All right, let me get the boring stuff out of the way. Always an Expat is a podcast about the expat journey, specifically being a Brit in the US. It's brought to you by Plan First Wealth. Plan First Wealth is a business I founded and run today, and we work with successful British expatriates living across the US. People like the ladies and gents who feature on this show, and we help them make the most of their opportunity and avoid the expat landmines. Now, with that being said, whilst Plan First Wealth LLC is an SEC registered investment advisor, the views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of Plan First Wealth. Information presented is for educational purposes only. So, without further ado, let's do this. Hi Mark, welcome to Always an Expat.
Greetings, sir. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking producer Sam, who's listening in here, that disclaimer that I do every time, I got to stop saying it. Let's just snip it out and drop it in. So bored of having to say it.
Well, dude, I think the intro was you nailed it. It was spot on. Apart from everything, everything was perfect except for personal friend. Are we friends?
You disagree? Have I misread the situation? Oh, no,
maybe.
I don't have many. Do I have to strike one off now?
I got like 3 friends on Facebook, and I can't keep up with them. Yeah. I don't need another one.
Okay, right. Well, sorry. I'll.
That's not true. That's not true. I grew up as an only child, so I need attention and I need friends.
So I'm back in.
Yeah.
Back in the fold. Right. Oh, get in there. All right. Okay. Phew. Right. Mark, tell us, where are you? How did you get here?
So you referenced Scituate and you said it perfectly as well, because it is an SC and a lot of people say Scituate, but and we are kind of, I guess, a borough of Boston. We're about 25 miles due south, right on the coast. Super nice place, South Shore. How did we get here? So Leah, who you know, Leah and I were in the UK for about 10 years together. And in that entire 10-year frame, I'd wanted to make that move to the States. And so almost like every day I'm hitting her on the shoulder, like, can we go? Can we move? Can we go? Can we go? Can we go? Can we go? And then she said, like, if you stop touching me, I'll think about it. Okay. And then I came to the US on business for a week. It was a conference that happened to be in Boston, and she said, "Look, if you're doing that, I'm coming back to Boston," because she was born in Falmouth on the Cape. So she's like, "If you're going to the States, especially to Boston, I'm coming. Baxter's coming." He was like probably about 18 months, I think, at the time, and so I did my conference for a bunch of days, and then we did a tour around New England for about a week and a half afterwards in an RV. And it was when we got home to the UK, I think it might have been like a day or two later, she said, just without me even prompting, she said, I think it might be time to go home. Mm-hmm. Like, so the best poker face I'd ever had was like, oh, really? I mean... If you really want. In the meantime, I think she might have said that to me on a phone call. And in the meantime, my left hand's already on the keyboard applying for my green card and, jogging the process along. So we kind of made that decision there and then. That was at the back end of 2014, if I remember rightly. We came out to the Cape.
Mark, just let me jump in. Why? Yeah. Why were you so keen to leave?
So I love travel. Always wanted to... I wanted an adventure, and one of the things that Leah had said to me, like, down with that, let's do it, let's go for an adventure, let's move to Argentina. And I'm like, I kind of see where your head's at, I like it, language-wise could be a bit of a problem for me. She's like, no problem. How about Vietnam? And I'm like, yeah, I don't think you're really getting where I'm coming from here. Language for me, even the English language is still a struggle. So like learning a foreign language and learning a like business finance foreign language is pretty grim. Like she speaks Japanese, German, Dutch, Spanish. Languages for her is second
for real?
nature. Oh yeah. We can come on to that at some stage. So I wanted an adventure, but I wanted a safe adventure, and so that's the US, Canada, or Australia, New Zealand. And we looked at Australia many years before. In fact, we were accepted into Australia, into Adelaide specifically, South Australia, which we just felt was pulling the trigger on retirement a bit too soon. So we
Why would that be?
Because it's really like once you're there, you're there. Like you're not going to come back to the UK if you don't like it. Just from a cost of living perspective, it's going to be a bit of a struggle, and you'd have to then migrate to Sydney. And we just felt like, did we want to do that? Like we're picking South Australia for a specific reason. So, and a couple of other things came up in the UK that we said, okay, let's go down this path and see where that takes us. So I've lost my train of thought now. So we wanted that, or I wanted that safe adventure, and the US really seemed to be the best route. And I'd been working for American banks and traveling backwards and forwards to the States anyway for a bunch of years before Leah and I met, and I kind of liked it here. I bought into a lot of the positives, turned my blind eye to the negatives, so that was kind of really the reason for me wanting to come to the US.
So it wasn't that you were necessarily desperate to get out of the UK, and it wasn't that you were necessarily desperate to get to the US specifically. It was just you wanted an adventure, and the US was on the list of the 4 or 5 English-speaking countries that.
Yeah, I'd say that.
You, the adventure you wanted. It was.
I think that adventure had really come about. My first time to Australia, I was 20, so I'm 51 now, so like over 30 years ago, and I loved it. I really liked it, and I wanted to move there. I just wasn't. I don't think I was confident in myself to be able to just quit the job that I had. I was working at a bank at the time. It was early 90s, so we were in the start of a recession. It was very difficult to find jobs. It was very difficult for me to find that job straight out of school, and I didn't want to just throw it away on a whim and then try and like recreate that again in Australia, and if that didn't work, then try and get that back again in the UK. So I just didn't have the, quite frankly, I didn't have the balls to do it, and so never did. And then really, like when I met Leah when I was 30, that then kind of changed my level of confidence, if you will, and I had somebody that could potentially ride that journey with me rather than doing it on my own. And it kind of really gave me that confidence. And so when we came out in February 15 to do a reconnaissance mission, specifically on the Cape, because we just felt like, well, that's a good place to start, right? That's where she was born. Cape's a great place. But when you're there and you realize, oh, you know what, I'm probably going to end up working in Boston. So that's a pig of a commute. If anybody knows that, that's not something you want to do daily. And then in the summer, absolutely not. So we went home, came back out, and we looked between the Cape and Boston. It was recommended to us, and we spent a week or so here and loved it and found a place, and next thing we knew, we were kind of on our way.
I watched a film last week, movie, American Fiction, I think it's called. Have you heard of it?
Oh yeah, no, I haven't. No.
It might have the name wrong of it. It's based on a book called Erasure, and I thought it was filmed in the Cape, but apparently it's filmed in Scituate, and it makes Scituate look fantastic. It makes Scituate look like, I think it's called American Fiction. It's honestly one of the best films I've seen in a long time. It is fantastic.
All right, I'll look at
so
that.
I'd really recommend watching it. But it made Scituate look like a Yeah, American fiction. It made Situate look like a seaside town, which I know it's on the coast, but it's not. It's not what I expected. It's not. It doesn't say.
It's a fishing village. It's an old fishing village, and it's still. I mean, there's still tons of boats down.
Yeah. Okay.
That are moored along the coast here and down by the harbour. There's a bunch of commercial fishermen that leave from here, and then there's plenty of tours that go from here as well. But it's not so touristy that. Well, it's not really touristy, to be honest with you. For us, it's just a regular town, regular
kind of
home.
Perfect. Yeah, it's kind of like the perfect balance. That
it's nice, and we're a 10-minute walk from the harbour as well. So there's a few bars and restaurants, a couple of boutique shops, which is right up my strasse. And at the same time, we have our own rail station that heads into Boston. So that takes about an hour to get into Boston. Or for me, I do a lot of travel out of Logan. So that's a 40-minute journey. Well, actually, that's a 40-minute or a 4-hour journey, depending on the time of day. But when I leave, it's pretty convenient.
You had me at 10-minute walk to bars and restaurants. For the first time in my life, I'm in a true American suburb where I can't get anywhere without driving, and I feel
that doesn't work for me.
Unmoored not being able to walk to a pub. It's just it feels wrong.
So on that note, like writing out that list of criteria, what do you like? So we're moving to the States. What do we want? What do we want to get out of it? Like, what will we compromise on? What needs to be better? And so, I'm being a bit flippant, but if there were like 50 things on the list, we said, okay, look, one of the things will suffer like a worser environment, if you will. The other like 47 of them can be the same, but at least 2 or 3 had to be better. But one of the things that was really interesting key for me was I need to be able to walk to a pub. I'm not promoting that from from alcoholism perspective.
It's our church. It's where you congregate. Right?
Yeah, it's kind of how we grew up. From the age of 12, your parents are taking you.
It's community. That's what church is. As much I know a lot of people really use it for religion and stuff, but for a lot of communities, it was just a gathering point for the community, and it's where they get together and see their neighbours and interact. And for us, I didn't even realise it, but for us, that was a pub.
Yeah,
and I miss it. Exactly, I really miss it.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, it's not like Kevin and I. So my neighbour Kevin, super nice guy, like really close friends. Yeah, every now and again we just have a little stroll down, grab a couple of beers, and then head back. It's nice. I think I would struggle to be in that neighbourhood type community. That being said, our son Baxter has made that comment a few times that he would love to be in that environment, because we're really also tucked away at the end of a private lane. So he usually voices that opinion at Halloween, because we don't have anybody. Yeah. Nobody in 9 years or eight and a bit years of having Halloween here, nobody's ever knocked on our door for Halloween because we're that tucked away.
Okay.
So we often go to his, in fact, we always go to his best friend's house, which is a super great neighborhood and set up for that.
Yeah.
But they're a little walk away from the pub.
We're next to a street that comes alive for Halloween in a way that I'd never seen before. It's kind of just getting the kids go. Kids go mad for it. It's a lot, but it's pretty cool, and the kids love it. It's really cool. All right, so 9 years in, how has America lived up to the dream, the ideals?
There are definitely days where I forget that I'm actually here. And I think that's just because I'm living my life at 3,000 miles an hour, and I forget to stop and just sit back and think, dude, what you set out to achieve, you have done. And I ask myself the question, what's it like? How does it feel? And there are definitely days where when I think that and ask myself that question, that I'm still not really sure, honestly. I don't dislike it. I do love it, but I don't know if I don't know if I'm really, really appreciating where I am and what I have. The boy from East London, so to speak, we grew up in a blue collar environment. Like, my family are very much working class. We didn't have everything. We weren't destitute, but feel like for that little kid, this is a big deal to be in a foreign country, to be a citizen in a foreign country, to be living like, where I'm living. And it's a massive privilege. I mean, just no matter where you are on the planet, like if you've got a roof over your head and you've got income, that's a massive privilege.
I mean,
I feel
Mark,
like,
I mean, you've taken a big step up. That's kind of not really debatable, right? You're a successful professional in the corporate world in America. Living in this kind of pretty idyllic suburb of Boston.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a step up from your origins, right?
It is. It's definitely a very privileged area, if I can say that. But I do equally feel comfortable in. I'm trying to be very careful how I say this. Like in other areas, like when I think back to old East London, there's still something about that that's very comforting to me. Like there's no, like where we live right here, and I'm just looking out I've got windows on three sides of my office here, and it's woods and it's trees and it's green or becoming greenish given the time of year. Yeah, I feel equally at home if I was surrounded by 1,000 people in 999 other tiny houses. So I like it. It's definitely definitely feels like a privilege to be where I'm at. But I'm equally. I feel like I could be equally home elsewhere. Yeah, I'm trying to be a bit careful about how I say that. I don't want to come across as being a rude ass.
No, of course not. But do you feel American yet?
I'd say no. Leah would say yes. She thinks I am. But I still try and like. Hopefully, if anybody would is listening to this can hear that I am English still.
There's no doubt.
I mean, there's been a couple of times where a few of my friends have said, "Ooh, yeah, you can definitely hear there's a bit of an American twang coming into that." I don't feel it. I've got no, there's no intention or no intent to go that way.
I'm not picking up a mid-Atlantic twang yet, and I'm very sensitive to mid-Atlantic because it's such a terrible sound. And I'm not picking that up from you yet.
Right. Well, I mean, like Baxter's accent, he's full on American, right? He's been here since he was he 2? I think he just turned 2. Yeah, he'd just turned 2. So he was just formulating those words in English, and he had a British accent for all intents and purposes for the few words that he was muttering. And then from a young age, he would effectively rip the piss out of my accent. I remember one time we were sitting there watching a show and he just started giggling to himself, and I thought there was nothing funny in the show particularly. So I turned to him and asked what he was he laughing at, and he made reference to something that I'd said earlier in the day, and he's like, "Daddy, it's tomato, not tomato." And I'm like, I think he was like 3 or 4 at the time. And I thought, ooh, yeah, that's, he's for all intents and purposes growing up as an American, but
he'll be able to turn it on and off one day, and he'll clean up for that.
His British accent is first class. Like, so I can see him being in the States and being a full on Yank and everyone loving him for it. And then he'll be in, bars and restaurants here and turn on his British accent and they'll be like, "Oh, it's so lovely." So, yeah, he's got the best of both worlds. But he identifies as a Brit, and I've not encouraged him either way. Yeah. I want him to be like, if he wanted to identify as an American, then fine. I've got no problem with that because he's effectively growing up as one. But I don't want to specifically encourage him either way. Like, I want him to find his own identity in that regard.
Do you think he could end up
He identifies as a Brit.
Do you think he could end up in the UK? I mean, I know it's far too early to tell. I'm just wondering if do you have like an inclination or an idea? Do you think has he got the wanderlust? Do you reckon?
Do you know what? I don't know if he would, only because of what he wants to be professionally. So he's 10 now, coming up 11, and since he was 5, he wants to be a marine biologist, and that's still a big passion, right?
Nice.
And so he's already in his mind. Just for shits and giggles, we looked at some colleges. I said, let's just check out the best colleges in the States and universities for marine biology. So he's already picked out his 2 are, one's in, I think it's the University of California, Long Beach, no surprise, and the other one's in Florida, no surprise. Yeah. And I said, well, there's also, I think it's the University of New England have a good program, and there's also one in Washington State as well. And he's like, you want to swim in that? Because I don't. So he's like, it's not that I don't. It's like, if I had a choice of warmer, clear waters, I'm going to go in that direction. So I suppose that's a long-winded way of saying, if he's a marine biologist, I probably don't see him migrating to the Thames estuary to conduct his research.
So, right. That for me is kind of like a dream job, right? I mean, is that the kind of thing, though, that is it massively oversubscribed, or is it do you have any idea of the demand for these kind of things? Is it the kind of thing all little kids want to become, or because it wasn't even a thing when we were younger, right? I don't know about you, Mark, but no one ever talked to me about doing anything like that.
No, nor me either. I think I was kind of encouraged to go down the financial route. You know, you've got to get a good job, you've got to get away from this life, etc., etc. Whereas my discussions with Baxter have been the other way. Like, dude, I don't care what you do for a living. Just make sure it's legal, it's moral, and it's something you want to do. But just at the back of your mind, always be mindful of the fact you're going to have bills to pay, right? So if you want to become a surfer and just go and live on a beach in Mexico, hunt your own fish, and that's gonna get you out of bed in the morning, like, happy for it, mate. Like, you know, whatever you want to do. But in terms of like, what's the demand? No idea. And to be honest, I haven't done any research with regards to that, and I've not encouraged him to at this stage, quite frankly, because I like the idea of him becoming a marine biologist. And if there's an oversubscription of it, I don't want to put him off that dream at this stage. We got plenty of time left to figure it out. But funny enough, a close friend of mine who's he lives out in Aspen, Colorado. His son is a marine biologist, and when I showed Baxter some of the pictures from a few years back when he was at university in Florida tagging sharks, that just re-emphasized to Baxter, like, this is what I want to do. Like, warm weather, ocean, killing machines. Yes, I'm all over that, please.
Yeah, that sounds great. Do you think you'll ever leave or go back to the UK?
I don't think I'll go back to the UK. I mean, they always say never, right? But I don't have like any pangs. Now and again, I actually create these fantasy worlds in my head just because that's who I am, and I'll put myself in.
I think that's called schizophrenia, right? I'm sure.
It might well be. Like, I'll be like, okay, so you're moving back to the UK tomorrow. Like, what does that feel like? How does that sit with you? And like, I don't get any like level of excitement about that. I miss the pubs. I speak to my dad. I have a very small family, but like I speak to my dad over WhatsApp, like chat, if you will, almost every day, every other day. We'll have a Zoom beer once every 6 weeks or so. The guys that I used to hang around with a lot, we still get together. Like my close friends, there's like 15 of us. We still play golf in Portugal every year. I have a golf weekend here in the States, in Florida. I've got a few of the boys come over from the UK for that as well. A couple of my buddies from the UK are now living in the States as well. So, and I feel like the world in some respects has become a really small place with technology. You can absent the need for human touch, Like, if I want to catch up with one of my friends, like we can have a really nice, very crystal clear Zoom call on a screen that makes his head bigger than if he was in the room with me, for example. So I don't miss like not being around those folks as much as I probably thought I would. And I think that's also because I love being around my family here and doing stuff with Leah here and with Baxter here. But I still get to dip into my friends as and when I really want it. So I don't feel like I need to go back to the UK. It just, in fact, the thought of it makes me feel claustrophobic. For,
Oh,
you know, you've
really?
got 70 million people crammed onto the same rock. Um, Notwithstanding what I said earlier on about, you know, you know, if push came to shove and I had to, you know, live in and amongst 6,000 people again, you know, you do it. Um, but I am liking the space. I'm appreciating the space a lot more that we have here. And I like that thought process that you could get parachuted into the States and you could walk for days and not see anybody. Whereas you could get parachuted into the UK, just hold your breath and you're going to bump into somebody.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
taking the moors off the Dartford moors, like, you know, out of the equation there. But hey, I don't see that moving away from the US though. Yeah, maybe. Where that would be to, I don't know. It's not really part of
How
the
does
thought
Leah
process.
feel about it?
We had this conversation a couple of days back where I kind of like, I don't know why I threw it out there because I didn't want to ignite it again. But I said, like, well, hey, if we could move back to the UK tomorrow, would you? Before I could even say do it, she was like, yeah, totally, let's do it. Where are we going?
Really? Why
So
do you
I'm
think?
like, a couple of reasons. I think, well, I've never really asked her outright because as much as I like transparency, I don't know if I want to hear the answers. So I bury my head in the sand. But I would imagine it's a range of things and not in no particular order. It's exotic for her,
Yeah.
whereas the US is not.
Yeah.
We've got great friends in the UK for the 10 years that we lived there as well. And then I'll be careful how I say this in case she does watch this episode, but like I think there's also a little maybe there could I don't want to say there's a blinkered view of the US, but I mean she certainly has great experience of the US and everything that's not right with it. And I think there's a heavy focus on that rather than maybe some of the more positives. But then I think, and rightly so, her argument would be, yeah, but Mark, you're just focusing on all of the positives and not even looking at the negatives. But then, you know, we could potentially have that same argument about the UK. Like some of the things that I don't like about the UK, she would say, you know, that's fine, we can deal with
I
that.
think that's it. So I obviously I know some of the things you're referring to. I think she's got a clear-eyed. I think Leah's quite clear-eyed on some of these. Let's call them structural issues in the
Yeah,
US. And I personally, I think she's right. And I think we move here as Brits aware of them, but having not lived them, we minimise them. And
yeah,
I'm now acutely aware of them here. But then it's just flipped for me now. So then I will look back fondly on the UK, and I'm thinking I'm doing the equivalent of what Leah's doing, which is I look on the UK now and you forget all the negatives. You don't forget all of them, right? But
yeah,
they dissipate, and you just think about the pub, and you think about the fact there was a dog in the pub, and you think about the fact you think about the Lake District, right? And you think about the headland in Wales where I had a caravan and riding my bike across the headland, and it's all so wonderful and idyllic, and you forget some of the kind of crushing negatives actually. And I think
yeah,
it's just a different it's a different side of that coin.
yeah.
The UK sounds like it's becoming quite a divisive place right now. I mean, America is divisive, but UK sounds like it's heading that way.
I think you're absolutely spot on. But also, there's a part of me that feels like I can't really talk too much about the UK for a couple of reasons. Number one, I've kind of shut myself off a little bit from a lot of the from a lot of the media. Now and again, I might open up the Sky News app and start scrolling through that, but like everything's just it's just negative. But then you know That's news in general,
news.
right? No,
Yeah.
nobody wants to hear about the cat being rescued from the tree. We're predisposed as humans to only want to
Yeah.
gravitate towards bad news and negativity. I think. So I've kind of shut myself off a little bit from the news. Now and again, I'll dip into the politics and then just think nothing's really changed in 30 years, 40 years of paying attention to politics. So there's that aspect, and then I haven't been there for coming up 5 years. So
Same.
I don't even know what it. I don't even know like what the price of a pint of milk is. I don't know what sentiment is like towards certain things. But we're gonna like maybe like try and head back for a couple of days in the summer, see how that goes. But yeah, I'm not expecting to land and feel like home. Like when I land in Boston, I feel like I've just come home. Like I just returned from a business trip yesterday. It was just nice landing at Logan.
Yeah. Well, you're it's always an expat. You are still an expat in the US. You always will be.
Yeah,
But now when you go back to the UK after 9 years and having been away for 5 years, and also I think it's important that you left the UK pre-Brexit. Right.
yes,
That's a
yeah,
different UK.
that's a good
That is
point.
a different UK. Like pre-Trump, America is a different America,
Yep.
and pre-Brexit, the UK is a different UK, I believe. And so you're an expat in the UK now to a certain extent.
Yeah, sorry, not to talk
Yeah,
over you
please.
there, but like I think also one of the things I like about like being here in the States is by and large, mostly we've all come from somewhere. So yes, you might be, American, and your parents might be American, and your grandparents might be American, but your great grandparents potentially came from somewhere, probably Europe, Eastern Europe. And I like the fact that that I do try and mix up with other foreign nationals. And I do like listening to other people's stories. Like actually yesterday, weirdly, the taxi driver that took me from I flew down to Washington on Monday and to attend a conference, and my taxi driver was from Ethiopia, and the taxi driver that took me back, different taxi driver, but was also from Ethiopia. And just listening to their stories of like why they left Ethiopia, they were about the same age, so the rationale and the reasons behind it were pretty similar. Their entry into the US was somewhat similar as well in terms of having family members that had migrated to the States like a couple of decades beforehand. But I don't like hearing that they have struggles to get to the States, but I'm interested in like how they made their journey, which is almost always very different from my journey. And when I became a citizen 5 years ago, and I'm in a room or in a hall, if you will, with 450 other people that were swearing in on the same day, there was only a handful of us that were pretty much from the UK. Like a number of individuals coming from war-torn nations, and I think we were about 60 countries represented that day. And the woman next to me had spent 20 years trying to get out of Iran. And so her journey was very difficult for mine. Just sitting there for 5 minutes listening to her story, I'm like, wow. All I had to do was fill out a couple of forms, and I'm a white man from London. Like it's a slam dunk. I'm in, married to an American.
It's America's biggest strength. Well, one of America's biggest strengths. The fact that for all its faults, and for all its fantasticness, if that's a word, is that it's such a goal of so many people to come here for so many good reasons. And a lot of America embraces that, right, and sees that for what it is, which is just it's an honor, and it's a privilege to America as well, because it gets this influx of people who are hungry and keen and grateful, and that's a hugely powerful thing. The problem is there's a lot of America and more, and this is a movement growing across the world right now and in Europe to demonize immigration, not just illegal. I know there's a problem with illegal immigration. I know it is a problem. I'm all for all sorts of immigration, but I know I do recognise that it is a problem down there. It needs to be rectified. But the world, or a lot of the world, including large swaths of this country, are turning against immigration of all forms.
Yeah.
And I think that's short-sighted. I think it's wrong, and that worries me.
If you can pick on the US for being that way, you can certainly pick on the UK for being that way as well, right? I mean, there are a lot of individuals that I know that voted for Brexit because they felt like they wanted to have a more closed border. I'm like, that you're not going to stop anybody who wants to illegally come into the UK happening just because of Brexit. It's just so short-sighted to even think that. And if you don't have immigration, you don't I think that can negatively impact an economy, both the local
100%.
economies as well as the broader economy as well.
100%.
And even here in the US, over the last several years, where we've seen probably certainly over the last 5 years, where we've seen immigration numbers dropping, you don't have the quality. I was talking to somebody yesterday as well about this on the flight coming back from Washington. Like, the number of people entering trades as a job here in the States has gone down, and that's, we were surmising, partly to do with the fact that immigration is not where it once was either. So yeah, I don't know. I agree that no country should necessarily just open its borders and let anybody flood in, but to stop it or to stem it in the ways that we probably are seeing here in the States. Yeah, you can't do that. Like I say, absent the fact that there are still indigenous folks here, we're all foreigners.
Totally.
Really.
Yeah.
In some way, shape or form. And I know that might sort of come across as being maybe a little bit offensive to somebody who's in a certain state flying the flag and saying, no, I'm an American, I'm a patriot. Yeah, but if it wasn't for your grandparents, where would you be right now?
Yeah.
So
back to you for a second.
That was incendiary, wasn't it? So yeah, best we move off.
No, I mean, I'm all for incendiary. Don't you worry. But back to you. As we reflect on the last 9 years, how do you compare your journey, career-wise in the US, building wealth-wise in the US, succeeding, striving, US compared to UK? Do you ever make that comparison? Do you ever reflect on what would life have turned out if you stayed in the UK?
Now and again I do. Yeah, now and again. I make that thought back to where would I be, but the overwhelming need to want to see something else and experience something else, even though it's not really that much different, I don't think, in some respects. Moving out of old England to New England, we're called New England for a reason. So I try not to make those comparisons. Now and again, I might, just for a litmus test, if you will, just, did I make the right decision? Oh yeah, I still kind of feel like I did, but I pay lower taxes here net. My house here is not that we should necessarily, or not necessarily, we shouldn't grade ourselves on wealth, but I'm able to buy a much larger house for a lot less money on a larger plot of land. And I'm not saying that's the only thing that's important to me, but it's just a product of what I'm lucky enough to get by wanting to make that move to the US. That'll probably be a different story if I decide to go and move closer to my buddy in Aspen, where I'll probably end up paying 5 times for my house and be on a third less of a property plot, if you will. So look, I try not to dwell on it too much, but I do think about what would life have been if I'd have stayed in London. But
what do you think would have happened with your career?
Say again, sorry.
What do you think would have happened with your career? Because a common theme on this podcast is people come here for opportunity, or when they get here, they're just finding an abundance of opportunity. And I think that's a real thing here. Has that been your experience?
I would probably I'd probably still doing the same thing at the same bank that I was at. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because I worked for a great organization. The people were fantastic. Um, and maybe my focus should be more, or if I was still there, should be more on the 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. than it should be on the 9 to 5. And I've tried to, like, when I've managed teams in the past, I've tried to convey that to others. Like, yeah, whilst the 9 to 5 is really important and that's what pays the bills, like, don't forget there is a life outside the office. So maybe my career would have been like, I'd be still doing the same thing 8, 9 years on, and that's fine. But also, and this is again pre-COVID as well, so it's difficult to make that comparison. Like, everything that I really wanted to do or be was based in and around London and based in and around having to be in an office 5 days a week. Whereas in the US, I felt like there's more opportunity in other larger cities. Like, you don't, like, we were never going to move to New York, for example, because that would be swapping, one very large, very busy, dirty city for another. I'm not knocking New York, but like, we're not getting there's no difference. Like, in quality of life, it's the same. So, opportunities are the same. But I think the US is a bit more receptive to individuals working from home. You can work for a company that's based out in California, but be based here. And since COVID, I think a lot more businesses have opened up to that way of thinking, and other international businesses have thought to that way of thinking. I've got friends of mine now that work remotely from home here for companies that are head officed in Europe, which in the past they probably wouldn't have had that opportunity. So I find that's a very different. Sometimes it's a difficult question to answer. Like, is the opportunity more? Because we still have to remember, like, I'm a white man from London, so there's always, like, so there's opportunities for me that don't exist for many others. Sadly, right? So I don't want to be too flippant by saying, yeah, there's tons of opportunities here in the States, because I think you have to be maybe a certain demographic in order to have that level of access.
I mean, that's undoubtedly true.
That's right. Another incendiary comment, I'm sure.
No. I mean, look, it's undoubtedly true. But at the same time, I don't. What's the word I'm looking for? Think negatively of people, of white men or whatever the demographic is, coming here to try and improve the opportunities that they have to them. I mean, both things can be true, right? You can enjoy a certain level of privilege from your background and your race, and that can be wrong's the wrong word, but that can be problematic. But it's still okay for you to try and make the most of your opportunities wherever you are in the world. I think that's okay.
Yeah.
As long as you're not actively perpetuating injustice and inequality.
Right.
I mean, but then are you just by participating? I don't know, right?
Well,
we've opened a Pandora's box here, haven't we?
Yeah, I think you might have done. Yeah, because I think that's it. Without you, like, maybe
actively
proactively, consciously, doing it, like, you're
part of the problem.
We're still part of the problem. Exactly. Yeah. That. Okay. Yeah, in my mind.
All right, Sam. Scratch all of this. We're gonna close after the opening 5 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's a day where I don't open my mouth and probably offend somebody. Sometimes I just sit there in silence. But you know
what, Matt? We live in this cancel culture. I mean, I hate to start to sound like the wrong side here, but this cancel culture where, these conversations are getting shut down now because people are scared to say anything. Yeah. So as long as we're having a good faith conversation and you're open to other people's points of view and maybe getting called out sometimes as well, which I think you are. We've had conversations.
Yeah, which I think is fine, and it's, I suppose, how you react to that or act to that as the recipient of being called out, right? And rather than maybe necessarily digging your heels in and saying like I'm right, you're wrong, like maybe take a bit more of a balanced view on it.
But we need to have people need to have conversations, I think. And right now, I think people are scared to have conversations for fear of getting shut down. We won't go there. But do you remember when we had a conversation about flags in a neighbourhood and what that? We talked about when you're in a certain neighbourhood and which flags are flying gives you the feelings about that neighbourhood, and you're like, oh, that's not what I picked up. And we had a chat about that. So we won't share that live for people. We can leave them wondering what we're talking about.
Fair play.
We have those conversations. Right, Mark, I'm going to try something new here. I'm going to try a rapid fire round at you. Okay, you ready?
Oh, go on then.
What do you love about America?
It's big. I feel like there is a level of diversity. It's big. The topography is fantastic. If you want to go and stand at the edge of the Grand Canyon, I'd much rather do that than stand at the base of man-made Eiffel Tower. You can, ski in the morning and swim in the ocean in the afternoon. Like there's a ton of space. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. When you said it's big, I had to fight every fibre in my being not to say that's what she said. So bonus points if you can. Bonus points if you can tell me what that's from.
The Office, US version.
Yes. Yeah, excellent, good. I've watched The Office so many times, and I once said that's what she said in front of this lady that I know, and she gave like an uncomfortable laugh. Like she didn't realise I was quoting Michael Scott from The Office, so I had to go into this whole like, no, I'm not being serious. That's not a real joke. I'm quoting this thing from The Office. You could tell she was just like, yeah, of course you are. You doth protest too much. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, that's it. You can end up digging yourself a deeper hole.
I'm like embarrassed every time I see her now because she thinks I make those jokes for real.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful.
Really me.
Yeah, no, it's Michael Scott from The Office. Please. Okay, what do you love most about living in America? Similar question, but a little bit different.
Yeah. What do I like about living in the States? I honestly, that's a really good question. I feel like that's a very similar question.
Like, it is a very similar question, but subtly different.
Give me an example of what, if you've asked that question to somebody else. How
well, you said it before. Your massive house on your palatial house on your massive grounds, tucked away in a corner.
Got to cut that out. Yeah, I mean, look, I suppose that's where my head was thinking. But like again, I don't want to be measured, or I don't want to just measure success based on, like the size of my house. And by the way, just for reference, like I live
the size of my manor. Is that what you're saying?
My manor. I lived in a rather small abode in the UK by anyone's standards. So anything slightly larger than that was going to be a bonus, I suppose. But like, yeah, no, I like, I do like having a bit more space around me. But then one could argue, Mark, well, why didn't you just move to Yorkshire, and you could buy a farm that. For half the cost of what your house cost in the States and have 100 times the amount of space. I do prefer the weather here, even in Boston. Like when it's cold, it's cold.
Yeah, no, my wife says this. The 4 seasons. It's dry. You probably get 4 seasons. And
you might down there in New York, say down and slightly across there in New York. Like our spring is about 5 minutes long.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so it's like cold, the snow melts, spring, it's like, that's lovely, and then it's humid.
Okay.
As we go into summer. So we do get 4 seasons, but 2 of them are relatively short in fall and spring, I think. Anyway, certainly compared to where I'd come from.
Okay. All right, I'll take that. What do you dislike?
What do I dislike? There's not. I don't want to open up Pandora's box, and I don't want to get too deep with like, I hate hate racism and hate, I don't want to go down that route because I hate that when I was in the UK, and I saw it just as much in the UK as I do here. What I do hate are Massachusetts drivers. Like, what's that about? Like the indicators are on a car for a reason. I even had like God, even yesterday. It always everything we're talking about seems to have happened to me in the last 24 hours because it's happening to me every day. Like just driving yesterday, somebody pulls out right in front of me. I've got nobody behind me at all, and they pull out of a turning in front of me, and I'm like jamming on the brakes to the point that I'm now right up to their bumper, and I could see them in their rearview mirror, like uh, pointing to their head as if like I'd done something wrong, and I'm like, you just pulled out on me, and we've literally then travelled 10 yards before he then slams on his brakes to turn left and cuts in front of a car coming the other way.
Dude,
And I'm going to make that. I'm going to make the short answer really long. Not long after moving to the States, there was a poll on the radio that said, like, we're going to give you the top 10 worst states for drivers. And I'm like, Massachusetts, number one, easily. Didn't even feature in the top 10.
well, I was about to say, undertaking on a slip road. I have never seen. I actually saw someone driving with their feet in Dubai whilst playing a computer game on their phone. That's a real thing that I saw.
That was in Dubai, though.
That was in Dubai on a 7-lane highway. There's someone driving with their steering with, and I'm talking not just driving, undertaking and overtaking with their feet while they played with they had their phone up at the face like this, and I pulled up alongside them driving, trying to get their attention, honking on the horn, didn't even notice, just gliding in and out using their feet. And I've seen it I wouldn't believe it if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. But other than that, which is the most crazy thing I've ever seen, undertaking on a slip road in America is just wildly dangerous, unbelievably
Driving
stupid,
here is
and
nuts.
it really is, yeah.
And the amount of people, like, so driving in general, but like so many people still using mobile phones.
Oh, so many,
and I'm
many.
like, you're in a brand new car, Bluetooth. Like,
You get 6 points in the UK now. You get 6 points in the UK, I think. I think I read that recently. It's 6 points, and here everyone's doing it.
It's nuts.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, I hate the driving. It's
All right,
shocking.
I'll take that. What do you miss about the UK? Pubs. Yeah, I'm with you. What are you glad to be rid of? Or what? Sorry, that's a bad way of saying it. What do you not miss about the UK?
My family, because I hate them.
Okay.
What do I not miss about the UK? Don't miss the beaches.
Okay. Right. Yeah. No one moves to the UK for the beaches, right?
I don't miss that lovely, warm, crystal clear, non-murky water.
Okay. New York or London? Oh, I thought I knew what you were going to say here.
Oh, I think I'm going to go with. Oh, see now, if I think London, I'm like, no, New York. And if I think New York, I'm like, no, it's definitely London. London.
I thought that was going to be a no-brainer for you. I thought you'd have been straight away London.
Yeah, no, like if I think about it, like London, I should have answered that straight away.
Okay.
But I do like New York though.
New York's great. All right, the big one: American football or soccer?
Oh, soccer all day long.
Course.
I have no clue what American football's about. Like, I like going to a game because it's entertaining. I'm not watching the game. I'm like, because I'm hanging out with friends. We've tailgated beforehand, so we've had a bunch of beers. We're drinking a few beers, like while we're there, sitting in the sunshine. The last game I went to was a 49ers game out in California, and I could tell you now, for the 4 hours that I think I sat there, I don't remember actually looking at the game
Really?
at all. Yeah.
I've been to one American football match,
it.
and I will not. You'd have to pay me to go to another one. It was at the MetLife Stadium, so it was an ordeal getting there, and the whole thing was just it was painful. Basketball, great. Yeah, I'm in on that. But baseball, love a day out at the baseball, sat in the sunshine, drinking the biggest can of Modelo I've ever seen in my life. Like, yeah, you have to hold them like this. You have to hug them. Basically, they're so big. Great fun.
I like that.
But American football, no.
I just can't get it. I've not even really tried, to be fair.
Same. 9 years
so
in.
I shouldn't really. Yeah, but like when American football was shown in the UK for the first time, I don't know if you remember this. It's probably a bit, maybe even not before your time, but I know you're a few years younger than me. But it was shown on Channel 4 I feel like it was shown on Channel 4 on a Sunday. My dad got into it, and so we watched Super Bowl 21, I think it was, together. And that was the Patriots. I want to say Patriots versus the Bears. I should probably look that up. And so I picked the New England Patriots as a team to follow just because, and only because it had England in the name, and that was it. My dad became a Dolphins fan, but that's it. Beyond that, so it's been kind of like in my life, but not like in my life. I just don't get it. I just don't understand the plays. I can't get entertained for 11 seconds and then have a break for 2
No,
minutes.
no, no, no.
It doesn't work for me. But
It
yeah,
doesn't
I'll
work
go
for
and
me
watch a
either.
baseball game. Like I'll sit and be glued to baseball, no problem.
I mean, I've got no idea what's going on with baseball either, really. But it's just I just enjoy it. I don't
Well,
enjoy
I've
American
over
football.
20. It was 20 years ago. Leah got me into it, and it happened to be at a good time as well because it was 2004, so the Red Sox won the World Series for the first
Yeah.
time in something like 80 years, and so it was a good time to follow them, and kind of followed on from there.
Okay, Mark. So my company, Plan First Wealth, and this podcast, Always an Expat, are all about helping Brits in America to thrive, take advantage of opportunities, avoid landmines, and to really thrive in America. Obviously, that's
Thank you for that.
we have a financial bent because we're a wealth management company. But if I was to ask you, like 9 years in, if you could go back and speak to yourself on the eve of coming here, or speak to someone else on the verge of coming here, is there anything you would it doesn't have to be financial, by the way, it could be anything, but is there anything you would advice that you'd give yourself or someone else that you wish you had had to thrive here, or make the most of their opportunity, something, maybe a mistake that you made, or advice for a younger Mark?
Well, I feel like the planning that we did to get here was, I think, pretty phenomenal. Like, and also being married to an American and having worked for US banks and having traveled backwards and forwards, I had a pretty good idea of what to expect. So I don't know if this is advice, but something to just bear in mind is whatever you expect, it ain't that.
Yeah, that's so true.
So
That's so
just
true.
be prepared
Yeah.
that it's going to be very different.
Yeah.
Like I'd been to the States, I'd traveled around the US on business whilst living in the UK. And it's only then when you're here and then you take a flight to San Diego from Boston that's 6 hours and you think, geez, I could be in Dubai in the
Yeah.
same amount of time from London. But so there's that. Just be prepared that you haven't got it figured out.
Yeah.
That's fine also as well. I wished that I'd taken control of my pensions a lot sooner. And one of my close friends in the UK, who's now retired early, is a financial advisor, and has said she lives by uh, the I was going to say she lives by the rule of three, like the rule of thirds, I suppose. Like a third of your income for tax, a third for living, a third for investment for the future. And she'd been doing that since she'd started work, and then she became a financial planner and a financial advisor. I wish I'd gotten hold of my like planning a lot sooner than I had done. And if it wasn't for you like reaching out and catching me on a good day, because you were, to be fair, you were one of probably 20 calls that I'd had in the first 2 years of being in the States. And I decided to take your call. I wish I'd done it sooner. But in some respects, I wish I hadn't, because then I wouldn't be sitting here chatting to you. I'd probably have a few extra $1 million in my account. I don't know if our friendship is worth that amount, but yeah, take, and like I in one of the shops that I'd worked at, one of the banks that I'd worked at, I'd hired somebody, and I said, look, and this was rare because I'd never really hired anybody straight out of college. I'd really only hired individuals that that had significant amount of experience, but this particular role allowed for me to hire somebody from college. And I said, look, you're going to go from earning nothing to earning a decent salary. They don't spend it all in your first paycheck, because then you'll become acclimated to that, and that will be like you'll forever be chasing your tail. So stick a third of that away when you get your next bonus. Stick that away when you get a pay rise or move to another job. Put that away, and then you won't thank me for it now, and you won't thank me for it in your 30s or your 40s, but when you come to retire, you'll thank me for it. So get your stuff sorted out, and especially if you're moving to the States, come see a professional like yourself.
You know, that thing you said about it's not what you expected that's so true. And then people say to me, "Oh, so how's it different?" Or how did it not? How was it? What was it versus what you expected? And I'm not even sure how to answer it. I'm not even sure what it is. It's just not what I expected, and that is okay. But the sooner you let go of that, the sooner you embrace it, the better for your acclimation and transition here.
I think so.
Mark, this is a podcast about being an expat in America. So one thing I ask all our guests is about the American dream and what it means to them, if anything. So, what does the American dream mean to you, if anything?
I think I live in a fantasy world, and always have done, like bit of a dreamer. So for me, I think I got caught up in the Hollywood aspects of the American dream is you can be anything and do anything you want in the States, and I've learned to temper that response, because again, that's true if you are of a certain demographic. So but for me as an individual versus being in the UK as an individual, I again recognizing caveat, this is not open to everybody, have more opportunity. I think that for me is the American dream. But also, and this might be a bit counterintuitive to how a number of individuals think, you don't have to be a millionaire. Right. Whereas I feel like in the UK, that's all we're striving to do, or all I was striving to do. But that could be just the product of being in and around London. I don't know. But here you can live relatively comfortably. So like the dream for me is, not necessarily having to chase the job that's paying $5 million a year. Like that's not what I'm about at all. So I don't know if that is the American dream, like from a European or a Brit's perspective or not, but there is more opportunity, I think, for me here.
You don't feel sucked into the American culture of work, achieve, make.
No. I do work hard, always have done. At least I think I do. Probably more so than I should. I don't feel like I'm told to do that. I just feel like that's who I am as an individual. So I don't feel like, if anything, the companies that I've worked for here in the States have been more akin to take time out for yourself. In fact, like put more emphasis on improving mental health rather than, hey, our expectation is that you're going to be working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like that's not what the vibe that I get from the large organizations that I've worked at here in the States. Yeah.
Nice.
And I would say if anybody's in that position where their bosses are saying, yeah, I want you working weekends and I want you working nights, and I want, like, if you can get out of that environment, then get out of that environment if it's possible.
Yeah. That's not sustainable. It's not fun. It's no life.
No. And no one, I think that this is a common saying, right? No one goes to the grave saying, "Oh, I wish I'd worked a lot harder." So, that's not for me.
Coolio. All right, Mark, where can people find you?
Hi, man. How can people find me? Check me out on LinkedIn. I'm hopefully my profile. I don't know how you put them up, but you can find me on LinkedIn. If you want to share my contact details with anybody, then I'm more than happy for you to do that. If anybody,
if I send people to your house, will they get past your security detail, past the gated,
No, you won't find it. It was so buried in the woods.
It's just a compound, right?
Shack.
Is it?
Yeah, exactly that. But if there are individuals out there that are thinking about making that move, or if they're struggling in any way to acclimate to the US, or if it's American colleagues of yours that have moved to the UK and are, you know, struggling in the UK, and they want some help or advice or guidance, then, you know, give out my information, and I'm more than happy to talk to these people to make introductions and help them get their head straight.
Cool, yeah. All right, mate. Thank you very much. Appreciate you being on.
No, I appreciate the time. Thanks.
Top man. See you soon.
Thanks, buddy.
Bye-bye.